There you go. Welcome to episode 67. No graphics this time, but we'll fix that next time. Yeah, welcome to Chaos Hours. Chaos Hour. I just came back from 2 weeks vacation, so I don't know how a computer works. But I do know they released Quarkus 2.3 last week. 2.3, yeah.
2.4, 2.3. Well, 2.4 is out too.
Okay, well,
sort of.
2.3 final was released, and various improvements in there. But one of the things that we find interesting, at least you and me, Erin, is the testing for CLI applications.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to talk about today. But for those who are listening in, surprisingly a few people getting here. Ask questions away, and we will try and fit them in. And
I love questions. We love questions. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna have to warn everybody. This is Erin and Max with no supervision. It's gonna be random and hilarious. So, oh gosh, Max, I came in and talked about the CLI and whenever that came out. What was that? May?
2 weeks ago? Months?
No. The CLI itself. That was 2.0, which was May or June back then. So since then, okay, I wrote another. I'm just going to show code because that's way funner. I wrote another random CLI because I do those things. Let's share my. How do you turn my? I do that button. That.
Yes.
Can I do that?
There we go.
Yes. I found the right button. So I wrote a random CLI that does Dungeons and Dragons things because, of course, that's what I do in my spare time. It's taken over my life, really, is what it is. So this project takes input from XML and digests it all and spits out Markdown because I use Markdown stuff. And so I was writing the CLI. See, I used JBang to install it. I can make this bigger. I used JBang to install it. And then I had a command line here that has help. And I was thinking about how to test this. And just like you and I were just talking a little bit ago, like usually you write a unit test and you test like your internal guts. And, that's pretty normal. That's what I did. I had my test. And in my files, right, I have little things like how do I parse the tester? How do I parse how classes are parsed or monsters are parsed or items are parsed or whatever. I could do all that stuff. But this is, of course, after I redid the Quarkus CLI with that testing. And I got to the place where it's like, well, I want to test running my client. And the problem is CLI, the CLI, my command line application, which I call client when it isn't. My command line application, my CLI. And I wanted to test the commands for it. And the problem is, like, we do nice stuff for regular testing when you use Quarkus test, the Quarkus test annotation. And so the Quarkus test annotation, I had this one open. Let me create a new. When you use the Quarkus test application, I'm not going to be able to find it fast enough, probably. It does some really great things for swapping in attributes, setting up. Your test is nice and clean. You write the test, you have Quarkus test, it plugs things in. It's really nice, right? The problem is that Quarkus test assumes that your tests your Quarkus application starts at the top. Oh, there's another thought too that led to this that I should share. So that your Quarkus application starts basically like before all of your tests and keeps running, and then you stop it at the end of all of your tests, which is exactly not what I want to have happen when I'm testing a command line. I want to be able to iterate through, let me dump all of my commands, please. And so I can see what we do.
Basically, it's a long-running session versus many small.
Exactly, right? And so it's a very different action, very different mode of operation in order to do this. And the other thing was, and this is looking at the Pico CLI extension. So if we open up another tab with the Quarkus IO guides on it, because those are my favorite things. So if we go to enter, come on here. This is Monday morning. I am not all here yet. I'm looking for, what did I just say I was looking for? the Pico CLI. Oh my God, I was just saying something. I lost it. This is chaos hour. See, told you. So the thing with Pico CLI, with this guide in particular, because I was starting this Fight Club adaptation command line thing, I was starting this from scratch. And so I came into this guide, and I have to tell you, this is something I think you did originally to make UIs, IDEs happy, right? It's like we have this thing that says, well, you can just write a command, and then you can have it start, and here's how you do it with multiple commands. We go down, we go down, we go down. We have profile things and blah, 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 blah. But then we have let's have your own Quarkus main. And part of why you have your own Quarkus main is because you want a static main so that the IDE can launch it, was your argument, right? Now, the problem is the Pico CLI extension has now 2 capabilities, which I don't know which one I wanted, right? It can figure out what your top command is and generate a main, which means I don't have to write one. It'll just do it, okay? So it'll just do that. Or I can write my own, and then I can invoke this. Or there's like another magic variant that I can use. Now, if I'm writing my tests, I have to know which one. I can't use the generated one easily if I'm going to launch the tests myself.
Correct.
Because it's generated somewhere, right?
Yeah. And just to be clear, I think there's just 2. There's one, you provide a Quarkus main, or there's one where Quarkus generates the main for you. And then depending on extensions, something starts up. And Pico CLI is one of those.
Yes. Well, yes. Right. I'm just saying this is the Pico CLI guide is showing you both.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And so I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, I don't really want my own main. I don't need it. I mean, like, why should I write a main? Why should I maintain a main thing? Like, that doesn't do anything useful. Why do I even need that? And the only reason I needed that in some cases was so I could launch the tests myself in prep. Anyway,
or run it for. You could in using IDE to run it, have a launch configuration or whatever it's called in IntelliJ and VS Code to run that specific thing. But it becomes tedious because in CLI you want to change the parameters constantly, and no IDE is good at doing that. Yeah.
Right. So what we came up with, and I prototyped this in my silly project. I had a PR where I threw this together for Stuart, who then made magic happen. And I tried making some things. It doesn't really matter. Point is, it came out this way, and I am so stinking happy with it. I can't. It's so awesome. So what I could do, like if you look here, right, I can just add, I can say this is a Quarkus main test.
So Erin, can you make the screen just full, and then I think it becomes easy.
Yes. Will it stay? Yeah.
There we go.
Better?
Yes, much better.
Okay. So I can say here, this is a Quarkus main test as an annotation. So instead of Quarkus test, I'm using Quarkus main test. And that's a cue to us that this is one of those things where it should run to completion every time. So we're not starting it and letting it run. It's a different run model, right? Where literally each test is expecting it to run to completion. And then I can use individual launch, like I can use a launch annotation on an individual method and pass the arguments. So that could be a single argument, or it could be an array of arguments. And if I add an exit code without writing anything else, I can say, use these arguments, expect this exit code. By default, it expects 0. So this is expecting a 0 response code. If I want to make sure that something happens and I get a 1 back, that's all I have to write, and it'll do that for me. Yep. So in the case of, I know this is an error, I don't really care as long as the exit code comes back, I'm good. That's super easy to write. And then there's the case where I want to add parameters and check a bunch of stuff and do, or I want to run multiple in a row. So I can get the launcher injected, and then I can launch it several times. And so each time I launch, I can supply different arguments. I get the result back. So then I can test the return code, or I can start inspecting the output. Cool. The best part about this, is then, it's like we have Quarkus test and Quarkus integration test, where one is just an extension of the other and it just runs. And I can do that now which means I don't have to rewrite my tests to have them run in situ, so to speak, at regular dev time, right? Just test build. But then it'll also run at integration test time, which means it can work off of the built binary, whatever that is, which is the way our integration test stuff works now, right? So it'll work off of native mode. It'll try to run the native binary. It'll work off of a jar because it'll try to run the final jar, and it just does the magic thing. And I don't have to specify. It'll find the main. It'll find the Quarkus main. I don't have to do anything. It just figures out what we made.
Exactly. Are you allowed in this to also change the configuration? I forget if we can. Like, could you? Well, so let's say you have a CLI. Quarkus CLI is a bit simple in this context. But let's say you have an actual Quarkus app, a traditional. What's the traditional? But a normal Quarkus
depends.
app.
I can't. I mean, you have profile settings as it is, right? So if you have a Quarkus CLI that reads application properties from a specific place, you could still use profiles to be able to trigger it in different modes. But there isn't a way to say, for this test, use this application properties. Honestly, in my opinion, because we have active bugs open, I don't think a command mode app should be reading external application properties from the file system, because you find random things.
No. Well, it should, but the Quarkus CLI shouldn't.
Even my CLI, I don't want it looking for random, because I don't run it from a single directory that has a predictable structure. I run it from wherever.
Yeah. So Erin, what you're talking about? Let me just make this as well. You're talking about, we have a bug where when you run a CLI, it uses a normal microprofile / Quarkus config rules of look up this properties and that stuff, right? And that makes sense for some kind of applications. But for example, for the Quarkus CLI, most definitely, you're like, just because I'm running Quarkus CLI in a Quarkus project, you don't want those settings in that Quarkus project to affect your CLI running.
Or from anywhere else. I mean, one of the things that you noticed this actually right out of the gate, and I just didn't get to finish it. You were running somewhere in some random directory, and it picked up env, a .env file. I don't want it to pick that up either.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is that for some for a default Quarkus app, then that we definitely need to fix it. We need to make it possible to not turn it off. I think Roberta is talking about how there is a way to do it. Yep. But what I'm talking about is even if ignore that issue at the moment, you have this thing where, hey, I want to test the CLI, what the CLI does with the Postgres connection URL.
Yeah, what we might, I don't think that's in there yet. The way I would handle that is either an attribute on the launch command or on the Quarkus main launcher where you specify a profile. That's how I would do it.
Yeah.
So that way your tests, your stuff, like from a command line app end goal perspective, where you want a standalone thing that you can move around wherever it works. Yeah. That way the like if you used a profile kind of thing to control that behavior, that would get you what you want, the behavior you want, and then you could expose the profile. There is another thing open for the command mode support generally to have a better integration between our processing of config, MP config style, and Pico CLI command line options, because right now they're sort of divorced.
Yeah,
they're like two separate systems. So we do have to. There's another issue to resolve that. So like within my application, if this is my test now for my silly app, right, I can still specify what my project directory is. But like one of the things I like to do in my tests is dump what the help is. Because I like to make sure that when I'm dumping all the commands, the help looks consistent, and the commands all, like I can just skim it when I look at my build results and be like, yeah, okay, this all makes sense. And it all looks consistent with each other. So I can show my various commands, ring, ring, hello, and show the help. And and I can see all that. And then in the case where I have, like in this case, I'm doing a transformation of XML into Markdown. And so there's several steps, and I want to make sure that they chain together well. right? And so this is the case where I can validate my XML, transform the XML, make sure, right, and I can dump what the result is. So if something unexpected happens, I'll tell you why that matters. But I can merge it. I can make sure that the merge happens right and show the final output file, and everything's great. But I can do that several times in a row. There's it, and that's all fantastic. So
very cool.
Yeah, I really enjoy it, and it just runs. And I'll show you, like, so. Oh, I have to do another step before I do the binary. But I really am happy. I am so happy that this works. So there's my help getting dumped out. I think I have to do a verify to get the integration step, which means stuff runs twice. So there's my internal tests running.
What, does it print output on the output? Ah, yeah, it does, because it's the same stream. Okay.
Yes, exactly. So there it's testing it's testing my binary, and we have it dumping what it's executing, so you could tell. And here it's using the built jar. So I'm running the jar that was built, which is awesome. Yep. And this is me dumping results.
Yep. No, and that's a super nice thing with this setup, is that without this, you would have to, which I'll show in a few minutes, how you do it if you want to do it completely independent. But the nice thing is you can start by just testing as a CLI and a unit test, and it runs in process. It runs the main method, and it means it's fast.
I haven't done this lately, which people are going to yell at me for. But the Quarkus main test that we have is compatible with continuous test mode, because it knows how to launch it, how to launch the test and run the test, and the way it should run and finish. So because the expectation is set, because this is marked as a Quarkus main test, when you're in continuous test mode, you're not in this weird thing where it's like starting a CLI process that runs forever. What is that? Like, what even is that? But when you're, it knows to restart it for every test. It does a little bit of a better job trying to figure out what you're trying to test. I am a big fan of that too. So you'll see it's building now. It's going to build my image, and it'll fail, which I know there's a failure because, and I have to figure out where that PR went. We have a case where we're still suppressing some XML stuff that we don't need to suppress anymore. Okay. I asked Sane about it a long time ago, and we have a PR somewhere to turn things back on. Because of course I'm doing low-level XML stuff. I mean, who doesn't write XML anymore?
No one? I don't know. They just don't want to admit it. Okay. Yeah. So, but that's the great thing, is that it's like it lets you run this stuff like in process, full speed ahead, continuous testing, unit test, whatever you want, and it also runs it as external jar or a native binary.
Yes.
So, means you can basically, because like, why would you run all of them? Well, when you're running in, let's call it JUnit mode, you are running in a very, let's call it the happy path environment, where everything is set up and run completely as you want it to. But if you run it in external process, stuff like what OS you're running on and the env environment will affect your CLI behavior.
Yes.
In funny ways you don't want to know. Well, you will find out. But, so that's why it's nice to have them all in the same. So why are you waiting for the native builds?
Because I'll show you that it runs everything and it fails, right? But this is my XML problem. But for me, writing tests and then running my tests, this is an easier way for me to figure it out. I didn't have to, I have confidence that I'm running the CLI in native mode the same way I ran it in JVM mode. It's just a different final artifact, right? And I have an issue here because of how we're handling XML, which is something interesting and new that's XML related, not related to my CLI code in terms of how it gets invoked.
XML plus native mode, I guess, issue.
Yes, exactly. Yes, it is an XML in native mode thing, because we suppress something we shouldn't. So we can flip to whatever you want to do now.
Yeah, I just want, because this was the perfect testing framework for Quarkus CLI commands. But I just wanted to also show others how to do. Let me turn myself back on here.
I need another camera. I need a dog cam.
You want a dog camera?
My puppy is back there, totally asleep. He's super cute. We need
Okay.
a dog cam.
So, okay. So in JBang, which is another product I work on, that can do lovely things, but it has a CLI.
Bigger.
But big,
Needs to make
but
it bigger.
it's a CLI. Oh, bigger. Sorry.
Yeah.
That was very big. But I have the what's it called? The challenge that it's not a Quarkus app yet. But even if it was a Quarkus app, I need JBang itself actually is a shell script that can run without Java. Right? So I need to be able to run there's stuff in my CLI that is not Java, which I couldn't test in the way that you're testing, for example. So I thought it would be interesting to just show a way to solve that, which I think applies equally to if you're doing Quarkus apps. That is doing, in some cases, might be nice to do it this way. But there's advantage, disadvantage to both of them. So I'll just show you what I did as the first thing. So I have 3 challenges. One is I have a shell script. JBang is a shell script with a jar. It's not just a jar. So I need to run actually in a proper shell to do the testing. And 2, I wanted to run on multiple platforms. But I started with just Linux at the time, Linux and Mac. So there's actually a product. There's a product called Asserta. Here we go. Oh, where's the link? I'll find it. I thought I had it.
You do.
There
It's
we
right
go. Yeah. So Assert SH is actually a little horrible thing called as a Bash library that allows you to do assertions in Bash scripts. Like,
Oh my
sounds
God.
horrible, but it's very useful. Yeah, you know.
I'm being traumatized now.
So my first set of JBang tests, and I actually still run these because they test stuff that I can't literally test from Java or any other process stuff, right? So this literally just says, so JBang has an init, like does assert that this command runs to completion. Great. Assert that that after that file, this also completes. So this says run this init test Java, and then check that file exists, and if it does, great. And you can do more of these. There's some small differences, but basically you're writing your test.
Is the raises testing the return code?
Forgot how it is. It's just
because it's got numbers after it, so I assume it's doing the return code.
Yeah, it basically it verifies that this command gives a 0.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and this one I think just
right. That's why you're testing the file. You're testing that the file exists, and you're expecting a 0.
Yeah.
Right.
And then there's more stuff like here. Only if I'm on Java 8, I need to do one specific kind of tests. This is, it looks horrible, but it's been very useful on catching weird shell script
stuff.
Right. And then you can do stuff like standard error checking, right? Which you're like, it's yours. The Quarkus CLI can also do in that space, right? But so if you're on a Linux only platform or Mac or in a Docker container and you run a test something that needs a bit more than just what you can do from a pure Java perspective, this is very useful in a sense. But I did this for, I don't know, a few months, and I was getting frustrated because most people who are running my CLI is actually running on Windows, not on Linux, because there's more developers on Windows than there are on Linux and Mac. So I needed to do something more. And I started going down the road that the Quarkus CLI is in, but I didn't do it just because I have this shell script out, like I have this layer on top that I can't afford not to test, basically.
Right.
So I went a step further and looked in a completely place you didn't expect it. So there's a testing framework called Karate, made by Peter from Intuit. And this is Karate is more known for testing. It's like not a competitor, but like something that value adds to like rest assured or that kind of thing, where you can test REST endpoints and other kind of things. But it can also it turns out that Peter last year, I think, or maybe 2 years ago, was exploring how we can use it to test UI applications beyond just the browser stuff. And he was doing all this kind of stuff like scanning images and like taking screenshots and figuring out what pixels are and all stuff I don't need. But it was like he was
really hard.
exploring how to do it more. And I told him like, hey, how about just testing CLI commands? That'll be a nice way of doing it. And he's like, yeah, sure, I can do that. So that was the wrong link. So he actually did enable it. And let me find that thing for you. So I actually have it in JBang.
You have to make it bigger.
Test folder.
Bigger.
Yeah, it's coming.
There you go.
So in here are some features. So what I'll show you now, it looks like Cucumber, but it's not Cucumber. But he just he reused the same syntax. So for example, here's a feature called for coding. It says if I'm on Windows, ignore this. Oh, let me do the Windows one because it's the one.
Yeah, I was gonna say you said you couldn't do the Windows one, so show me the Windows one.
There's one that's a bit different. Right. So he just says, here's a scenario like feature, and then you can have scenarios, and then say, hey, here's a command, and then the command I want to execute, and then I can say when this command, an output will be exactly equals to this. So this is the same as your get output equals 0 : foo. I can do a bit more. Where are we? For example, edit feature, export feature. Maybe that's a bit more interesting. So yeah, it says when I do remove hello world jar, when the command this, the error contains exported to error contains hello world jar. By the way, the reason why there's error here is just because JBang, the shell script, doesn't output to standard out because that will conflict with your actual running app. So it sends its good stuff on standard error. That's a JBang specific thing. But basically, it means that I can run these. I can write these scripts that works on both Windows and Mac and anywhere, basically. And it can, I can run it in separate. What's called separation? Separate from all the other stuff. So I run the normal JUnit test, and then I have, if the JUnit passes, then I run this stuff, which takes longer because it literally is launching the CLI every time there's a when command here.
Right, but you're testing your scripts, which you absolutely need to do.
Basically, right? And of course, because it's JBang, I'm actually running it with JBang. So just to make it really, really meta, you'll see here, which is a good way because it helped me find that I had a case where because I ran Karate with JBang, I found an error which I didn't have a test for yet. So that was nice. So basically, I can't run my test for JBang without JBang actually working. It's a very meta thing. You'll see here, I'm actually using JBang to run Karate. Is just I run the main method of Karate, and then
I love it.
So
that is so great. That is so funny.
All kind of fun. So that means I can do Karate, and then I can take one of my features. What was the one we had before? Edit? No. What was the thing? It doesn't matter.
Oh, you're asking me to remember? I got no memory.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm running that one feature, so I can run. Yeah. I can use it to run a single one or all of them or whatever it wants.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it says features, scenarios, and stuff. And the really cool thing is, is that they have these. It fits all into the JUnit report. So when stuff fails, it gets included in the report, so I can download them and see. Oh, why did it fail on Mac and not on Windows and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. And then on top of this, what I generally do in my core test is more like, let's call them the traditional tests. Like, instead of running the actual process, I'm running. My brain is not. I'm running more like, oh, there we go, test. Standard, like testing how the classes works.
Yeah. Standard unit tests.
Unit tests, right? So these are
Yeah, like I said, I have
are,
the unit test too. I just wanted also to have the
right,
full round trip with it. So for sure.
Exactly. So
cool.
I'll turn that one off again. There we go. There we go. So no, that's the setup, and I think this is one of the things that are fun in Java world is CLIs are not a normal thing.
Not yet.
But not yet. No. Well, the last 2 years have been normal, but before, no.
Actually, like half the time I don't use JBang to run. See, I'm lazy. So like half the time don't use JBang to run Java files directly. I use JBang to set up my aliases for running the jar files I build out of my Maven repo because I'm lazy.
Sure. Yes. So no, but the cool thing is that with JBang you can run like small, let's call it scripts and small things, but with Quarkus you can and other frameworks, it's not like Quarkus is special in that sense. You can be able to write CLIs for forever, but it's always been hard to kind of test them. But that's why you wanted to do this episode. It's like, hey, we actually added this specific stuff to Quarkus to make it super easy if you're in the Quarkus world. But I also felt it was justified to show, hey, in general for CLIs you have at least a few options.
I think the cucumber stuff or the karate stuff is cool.
Yeah. Right. And I actually
when we start doing the native, like part of why I wanted this stuff for the Quarkus main test and the integration test stuff is because we do have plans to distribute the Quarkus CLI as a binary. There's some stuff in the way of us getting there at the moment, but I wanted to make sure that I could have consistent tests across all the platforms that I don't have to write 50,000 times, right?
Yes.
And that was like, can I please have this? Now I have to get some other things fixed so we can get to the place of using it. But I could also see if we have some special cases where the karate stuff could be useful too, especially in our ecosystem test, for example, to make sure it works across more platforms.
Yeah, I think because the karate test, the Quarkus main test you have does require you to have a Quarkus project that has the test in them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's really good for the in situ stuff. And then the other one might be, like I said, more useful in our broader ecosystem tests where we're trying to make sure that stuff runs across built things, run across versions and stuff like that. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. You could write a test scenario that says, let me go grab the 7 last version of Quarkus CLI and see if they fulfill the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Test suite. Right?
Yeah,
so
I like that.
In that way, so that's the great thing. So yeah, none of these are replacement for the other. They all kind of complements.
They're all complementary.
But I'll say if you're running a Quarkus app and it has a CLI side to it, the new Quarkus main test is definitely the thing to go for first. It's way simpler.
So much. I love it so much. And it makes me feel better trying to use continuous testing with the CLI stuff because the life cycle makes more sense to me.
Yes.
Like when I was trying to do it before with like continuous test mode on, I was like, what is it running? Like I don't know what state what is it doing? I don't even understand how this is working. It didn't.
But Erin, wasn't that just your brain get the wires wrong? Because the continuous test literally just restarted the app and just that was it. There was no. That was it.
Kind of. I mean, it doesn't. It sort of kind of sometimes restarts the app, and sometimes it can do smaller pieces if it can do the smaller pieces. It doesn't always do a full restart.
No, it does for command mode. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
if it exits, it goes back.
Yes.
But anyway, can you actually show continuous testing? Like I don't have a setup where I can actually test it. Does it work for your client thing?
Well, you're gonna watch me break things now, aren't you?
Of course. I'm here to see you break stuff.
Oh, I haven't.
Because that's actually I think Stuart actually did this. So
Oh, I wonder if my client thing will even work. Oops, I did the QSS one, which might die.
Yeah, you have to make it a bit bigger. Are you doing?
Oh, it worked. Hey, look at that. I don't have a broken CLI. I was pretty sure. I must not have replaced. I think none of my builds have. I was running the one that's on my dev tree, which is broken right now. So
yeah, but just to notice a few things for people, like, because this is actually also fairly new. I'm not sure that's 2.3 or 2.2, but you can actually change the command line arguments too. Right? So you see at the bottom it says command line arguments currently something
empty.
weird. Oh, empty. Sorry. Yeah. So if you press E, you can change your command line arguments. So that was the thing that annoyed me the most with the continuous mode, was that I was starting up in one with some set of parameters, and then I had to exit it to change them. But that's not a case anymore. So that's just.
I do. I forget how to edit it. I'm in
Press
weird
E.
mode. What did I do? I did.
Then you type something.
Yeah, but it's not showing me what I typed, so I don't know what I just did.
Okay.
I broke it. I broke it. Let me go.
Okay. Well, it should work.
Yes, it should work.
But not just not on Erin's machine.
Yeah, well, my machine is in a weird state from hell because I've been breaking things. That's what I do. So if I see, it went into weird mode. What happened? Oh no, that worked! Okay. Yay! So now it reran my tests and it dumped stuff out. My help tests.
Okay.
So that's exciting.
The thing. Yeah. No, so that actually, like, this I actually think we are more or less very feature complete on the command line running and testing now, right? As we can now, you can run it in you can write CLIs or command modes apps. You can run them in test. You can run them in dev mode, and you can edit the command input. You can write the Quarkus main test as an addition to Quarkus normal test, which will start in a more, I don't know what we call it, but like contextual, like a multiple runs instead of a single run. And it lets you check the input and output and command exit status codes.
Yes.
And at the same time, you can do that in dev mode, but you can also run it in, it's called jar mode or native binary mode. And that's quite powerful.
So if I add a new test.
One thing I haven't even thought about if this makes sense here, but I know there's going to be a question. You can't change the CDI stuff in this, right? You can't inject different things in the Quarkus main test. Quarkus main test doesn't allow you to tweak those parts, does it? Or test those.
It runs as a separate initialized thing, so I believe so. But we'd have to test it.
Yeah.
It starts it in its own class loader, and it's starting it from the top.
Yeah. Cool. So that's good.
So if I add a new test, does it work? It runs my tests. I got a failure because I did something wrong. Oops, there it is. Yeah, I'm using a file I can't find. Or I'm using the wrong one. Did I use collection? No, I used compendium. But this is me dumping the output, right? So I was expecting, because this one is still expecting help. I didn't fix my assertions.
Okay.
So that's me.
And the CLI gets a bit crowded when there's long stack traces.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. This is me not changing my output result, right? So the result is right.
Very nice.
It should run fine. There, it's rerunning my test to fix it. And it should be fine. Ta-da! Everything's great. So I just added a test and it reran it, and it with the new parameters that I put on the thing.
Yeah.
And I think I have changes to do. I only fixed this last night, so like,
sure.
This I think got eaten. I have to set the options so it sends the options, right? Oh, no, not in my code, you dingleberry. Did you know there's a funny word that I figured out with my kids the other day?
What?
I don't remember what it was now. It was like dingus, which is like a small. I always thought it was I always thought it was like really attributed to a person. And it's like we use it sometimes idiomatically to refer to a person, but it actually is like equivalent to widget. It's like a thing that is so small and unimportant that it doesn't have a name.
And you can't remember the name. Okay, got it.
Exactly. It's so irrelevant that we can't remember the name of it. Which when you call a person that is just hilarious. I mean, it's not nice, but it's really funny.
I think I called him Erin.
Anyway.
That's what we do. So yeah. No, wait. It seems we have a quiet crowd today.
Yeah, we do. It's okay.
Did we cover anything? Are we missing stuff? Any of this stuff?
I don't think so. I hope people come and ask questions in Zulip or
Definitely.
open issues if they try it and have questions. Any feedback on the CLI is also good. I know we have those 2 issues that are outstanding, like having better ways to handle config in Pico CLI between CDI artifacts and the CDI stuff and whatever the other thing that word left.
Yeah.
The Pico CLI stuff and the CDI, the MP config. We've got those 2 things to square. We have an open issue for that. And then we also have an issue for reading random stuff in places and being able to, my plan that I'm working out with Roberto is that you will be able to like it'll be an opt-in to opting out. So it's like you'll be able to say ignore .env files and ignore application.properties. So it won't just always happen, right? But it's like for me, for the Quarkus CLI, I will be able to say, don't read those files because I just know that they're suppressed.
As well, the thing I was going for, one was to turn it off, just saying, hey, I don't care.
Exactly.
But I also would like to be able to say, hey, this is Max's CLI, not application properties. Just do the thing you normally do, but use.
There's a way to do that already, I think, to say use this other property. There's a way to.
No, but they are. You have to have an application property, an empty application properties next to it, so you can't. It's
right.
A bit.
Right. So it would be like use this other thing instead. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, my further thing is we have the case in the Quarkus CLI. We want you to pass the YAML in as a parameter. Sometimes, so. Where in the order of operations that happens is interesting because theoretically MP has already read it, but it doesn't know what it is yet, which gets back to this other thing of how you square Pico CLI arguments, which says you can pass a file containing I'm like off my screen with my hand gestures. Doesn't matter. But so Pico CLI has ways to say, here's how you specify a file containing config or an app file, or it has ways to do that. And then we would have to figure out how to square that with what MP is doing. And we have an order of operations problem, basically, because we want to not start the Pico CLI stuff until all the MP config is read, but that's too early.
Okay.
So.
Well, yeah, I can see.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But I mean, in my case, for what I want to do in the Quarkus CLI, I just will turn it off and we just won't use MP config for that, which is fine because it's not that big and we've got other things that we have to do with it. So.
Yeah. No, sure. I can see that being a thing. So cool. But is that it for today?
I think so.
It's a quick one. So CLI.
Well, we both talked like 80,000 miles an hour.
Okay,
so
that could be.
We're both like wound up like tops. Like we could have gone slower, but it wasn't that kind of a Monday.
No, it was a quick Monday. So
this is Rocket Roller
cool.
Monday.
Okay. Well, if no one else has a question, and I'm out of, I think writing CLIs now is perfect in Quarkus. There's nothing wrong with it. It's all.
I love it so much. Thank you, Bill, for saying thank you. You got one. Yay!
Awesome. There we go. Thank you, Bill, for listening. So cool. Anyway, no, that was good, and we should actually write a blog about these because it's pretty nice. We should get it up. But,
yeah.
You put that on our to-do list. All right, guys.
Our to-do list. Your and my to-do list is like what, this big?
We'll see. Okay.
All right.
All right, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Have a happy week.
See you around. See you next time.